Hey, this is Sabrina Monarch. I'm going to be talking to you in this video about the Jupiter square Mars transit. It was just exact a few hours ago, but it's going to be an influence through a good part of this month. So we've been building toward it with Mars in Libra, and just some hours ago here, we had the exact square between Jupiter in Cancer and Mars in Libra at 18 degrees. So they're going to stay in orb even as they're separating throughout like later into this month. So I just want to give you some insight on some things that may be arising, that have been arising, and that could be integrating as the month goes on. So please like this video. It's a way to give back to the channel, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment at some point and let me know how this all lands for you. So Cancer and Libra, well, let me start out actually. One of the main images that I have for the Jupiter Mars transit here is like a partner dance and the sense of clumsiness and maybe like overstepping or feeling dragged or, trying to find your equal footing within the swell of passion inside of relationship and the awkwardness and the clumsiness therein. And I think it's also another scaffolding I want to set up here is that when Jupiter and Mars come together, we have great teamwork and we also have conflict. Mars is a planet that has to do with conflict, strife, separation, war. And Jupiter is a planet of philosophy and of overcoming obstacles, of lessening our burdens. It is a planet of expansion and abundance. So when Jupiter and Mars come together, there is a sense of growth through conflict. There's a sense of morale, right? Like being inspired to overcome challenges or feeling confident that you are capable of it. And there's also a sense of rallying or like doing things together. And sometimes, even at a spiritual level, if you back way out, Jupiter and Mars together can be about seeing the wisdom inside of even more adversarial or enemy type relationships where it's like that person is my homie from, the soul realm, even if we're not cool in this life, because you can see the growth that the challenge between you and them has inspired. So we have something about conflict and like a good spiritedness inside of conflict to set up here. And the other thing that I want to name is that Cancer and Libra are both some of the most interdependent signs of the zodiac. Libra being about relationship, and Cancer being about bonding and early attachment and mother and child. Like Cancer is where we really work with our deep needs and the really vulnerable ones, and the things that also show up inside of our intimate connections. So, thinking about a Jupiter Mars square with Mars in Libra and Jupiter in Cancer feels like um, relationship conflict. And I want to speak to the nature of some of that conflict and maybe what could support integration as the month goes on. So, for one, Mars in Libra is going to be concerned with balance, right? And whenever we deal with balance with Libra, you have actually balance as a verb, as a thing that is going, you're weighing the scales, or if you tip in one direction, it creates a opposite effect in the other direction. So Libra works with balance and imbalance. And Libra is also where we are trying to get on the same page as other people, right? So that in terms of the relational dance, and I think partner dance being a great metaphor, it's like you're trying to be in step with the other person. You therefore sometimes have explicit relationship agreements, or also sometimes more of that felt intuitive sense of, gaining your footing with another person. And Libra can also be very aware of other people's needs and taking other people's circumstances into account. So that could be the part of us that maybe if a partner is very short with us, but they're going through a rough time or they have a lot on their plate, a lot of stresses, that you feel the discomfort or the ouch of them being short with you, but you're also taking into account, you're measuring, you're weighing all the things that they are going through. So Mars and Libra could be the part of us that is energized toward like really considering where the other is coming from. And Jupiter in Cancer, on the other hand, is very, like, I'm seeing with that, like, all these swells of subjective passion where, our own emotional rhythms and our own emotional clock doesn't have to be in step with other people. In fact, like Cancer being about memory and reflection in some sense, if you are in connection with someone, and you think about it and you reflect about the connection after the encounter, the last encounter, the last series of encounters you've had, that content and information can grow and swell like a pregnancy, right? Like you become pregnant with the emotions and sensations of that person's effect on you, right? And what you're carrying from that, whether it's now resentment that's building up, or it's increased adoration and desire for bonding and connection. But keeping in mind that because it's Cancer, it's like there is a sense of that being in the self, right? And in terms of the awkwardness or the clumsiness of partner dance, it could be those moments where we just blast people with that subjective content, our deep feelings, revealing that. And the dynamism inside of relationship where the relationship can actually adjust to that, right? So you have these more passionate dances where there is a reciprocation between a person's reveal of passion and affection, and then the other person mirrors it, and there's this dynamic interplay. So that could be happening. And sometimes the subjective passion that is welling up within us is out of step, possibly, with the other person or where they're at in that moment. That there is a collision between the moment in time, the dance of that relationship, and whatever subjective content is swelling up. And so then you have the experience of one person, bearing everything and bearing their heart or what's going on, and the other person not catching it or not really being able to reciprocate or be in that dance, right? And that creating a lot of emotional turbulence, especially for the one that was maybe in the more subjective emotional state, but also for the one that's like, what was that all about? And so that energetic, I feel like, is present right now. And so I just want to even name that because it can be very uncomfortable or unsettling to be inside of that. But I would suggest that this sets up a number of philosophical explorations or conflicts or places of growth inside of that dynamic. Because the dance of relationship and of being truthful in relationship involves many different threads, right? And depending on where you have been historically, this transit may be challenging or activating you in different ways. So let's say, inside of the connection and relationship and what's the status quo of the relationship, one or both people may begin to feel emotional content about something that could change, something that could develop in the relationship, a need that is beginning to form. And concealing and tamping down that need and just acting rational and balanced and grounded may keep the peace or may keep the relationship in step, in some regard, but there may be like a deeper opportunity for connection missing. And so sometimes there is an actual wisdom and deep creativity inside of letting that swell of this is what I'm feeling and this is what I'm noticing into connection. And even then, as well, sometimes people learn particular communication tools to bring that subjective content that is swelling inside of them in a very chaotic way, like how to actually balance that material internally and be able to intelligently offer it to the other in terms of asking for consent, like for, you know, can I share something with you? Or do you have time for a deeper conversation right now? Right. And creating these ways to get on the same page or to, um, for example, maybe reveal with someone, like, I have anger with you, right? Because you can reveal the anger in rage in a way that maybe creates some degree of deep stress or distrust or almost like wounding in the relationship, especially maybe if, some couples can really fight and they can like be with each other's anger and it's okay because their systems can both handle it. And some people get very threatened or kind of withdrawn when people get angry at them and they don't do well with it, right? So these can be subjective things that we learn inside of our relationships. But that being said, to be able to bring charged content of what's happening and to share it with the other in a way that is an invitation into deepening together and not an accusation, not a divide or making the other person an enemy, can go a really long way. And so I say all of this because sometimes that urge to just be honest or be authentic or let it all out is idealistic. Like it's a nice idea, but in practice, there is a messiness to it that sometimes counteracts the actual desire for connection or for arriving at the same page with other people. And so I think that's where it's helpful to remember that this Libra part is a relational dance. And what does it look like to actually be in step with the other person or to create connection where there is that sense of being in step? And so for people that have, like one way that this can be challenging for people as well is like when people start to, in an imbalanced way, build a lot of subjective material inside of their own consciousness, their own journey about what's happening in a relationship. And so instead of being in the present moment and in step and in the dance and the connection and co-creating a dynamic, one or both people may be developing a private world of association and content and wanting that to be part of the connection, feeling sad that the other person isn't playing along with this big internal story or dynamic that's happening. And then withdrawing or protesting or something like that because the other person isn't playing along with that. And so it can be a really deep skill for people that have that issue to start to relate in step. Like what's actually happening? What are the gateways and the thresholds that we're crossing together? And allowing that to be something that happens together. That being said, during the Jupiter Mars square, I anticipate that there could be these kind of big swells of emotion or passion that are creating more like dynamic balancing acts inside of one, how do I relate to the content that's getting stirred up here? And also, how do I reveal or share that? And how do we bridge our worlds inside of this? So internally, some people may also be so used to taking everyone else's needs into account, right? And not including themselves or being Libran in this way of like, yeah, just always understanding what other people are going through and kind of minimizing one's own subjective experience and not kind of disrupting the dance with one's own agenda or desires or emergent experience. And so it could be really powerful. And maybe there is something stirring around. Actually, there's something I want to reveal and share here. There's something I don't want to hide anymore. And in other situations, there may be a tempering, a balancing of excessive gestures or excessive emotionality when there is a kind of cognitive awareness of like, I need to deal with that material, or there is a way that I need to communicate that in this connection. But if I just put it on full blast, with this particular energetic that I have unintegrated through my system, it is going to create damage inside of the connection. And still, yet another possibility, as some of these emotional threads or internal chaos have been refined through wisdom, through clarity, through tussling internally, or maybe receiving some feedback or something like that, there may be a gesture that wants to come through inside of connection. There may be some kind of grand gesture of affection or desire or invitation or devotion that could be dramatic, like it might be. And so, what I'm posing is that there's not necessarily one correct or proper way to navigate this, but just that there is some kind of deep friction at the moment between being balanced, Libra, and thoughtful about where other people are at and what is situationally going on and where you are in step in the dance. And then there's this other big wave of passion and inspiration and subjective hunger that's coming through that wants things to be different, that wants things to be better, that wants an unmet emotional need to be stated or seen, or for things in the relationship dynamic to change. And we're going to be contending with a variety of types of relationships here in terms of relationships that are a little bit more, maybe you're not on a team. Maybe maybe it's like a family member or something like that, where you are bonded in a certain way, inevitably, but you do not get along and you're, dealing with very different interests or agendas. You can also have relationships that you do have a shared vision or a shared commitment or shared intentions, and then conflict or these kind of rebalancings are happening inside of the relationship because people's subjective inner worlds are going through big floods and changes at the moment. And then there is a dynamic rebalancing that's happening in relationship. So hopefully it helps just to hear that that is a dynamic that is happening, because I think that the emotional swells, it's also eclipse season, can run quite big here. And it's kind of like a mind and heart kind of balance, or like an instinct and intellect balance. And finding some way to be alive and authentic and in connection without being hysterical or destructive unnecessarily. So that's what I have for you about the Jupiter in Cancer, square Mars in Libra transit. Leave a comment. Let me know how that resonates with you. Subscribe to this channel. There's still time to sign up for the Lunar Mysteries of Creation class that's happening the day after the eclipse. So this is a class that I'm teaching to introduce the archetype of the moon and explore how, as we develop in this life, we come into this life vulnerable and dependent, and we are shaped by our caregivers, we are shaped by contact. And so that early developmental part that relates to the moon archetypally is actually something that we carry with us throughout our lives because we have certain parts of us that are pretty developed and able, and we're able to navigate the world with those aspects of ourselves. And then we also have latent or exiled or, deep in shadow parts of ourselves that haven't really been nurtured and haven't really been met. And so we're not going to feel very safe to inhabit those parts of ourselves. And we develop other personality parts that will kind of compensate for that. So, in the context of how can I move my life forward? How can I live my best life? From a lunar perspective, the thing that moves the plot is actually nurture, care, and co regulation, nurturing latent or exiled parts of us back into our whole, and then getting to have that part of us online. So I wanted to talk about nurture and the quality of the moon from an angle that maybe you've thought about, but maybe you haven't thought about or reflected at this depth about it. This is a part of the moon and kind of a mystery of the moon that has really touched me and awakened so much in my life. So I wanted to offer a class on the moon as like a archetypal introduction and go deeper into how we create things in our life through nurture as a force. So that talk is free. You can come live. It's September 8th at 10:30 a.m. Pacific. There will be something special for those of you who attend live. And my School of Astrology, the Felt Sense of Evolutionary Astrology, the Felt Sense School of Evolutionary Astrology is opening soon. I'm reteaching astrology from the ground up, giving you everything you need to know to read natal charts from the perspective of the soul, like who you are in that deeper way, and how this life is very much part of that story. This is a beautiful wisdom school, a way to not only understand what your chart says, but to gain these meditative reflections about yourself and your life that can ripple into your life onward in a really powerful and impactful way. I'm really excited to be teaching astrology again. And, I have been teaching the evolutionary astrology intensive, but I had the really clear internal sense that it was time to reteach this body of work and update it. So I'm going to be sharing announcements for joining that school here soon. If you're on my mailing list, you'll hear about it that way. If you come to the Felt Sense School, the Lunar Mysteries of Creation talk, there will also be some information about that. So exciting things ahead here. Remember to like this video, leave a comment, and thank you so much for watching.